Welcome to part 41 of Final Fantasy XII, where we're still climbing the Pharaoh's Tower as we enter the second ascent. Around the main room of the second ascent are these 4 altars. Interacting with them will cause a negative effect to occur on you that you have to deal with for the rest of the climb, but you pick which poison you wish to take up with you. So I take the first one with me and then go up a floor, kind of explore around a little bit, but then I eventually come back so I can show you what the rest do. Because this first one, wealth avails you not. You can no longer use items. There is one that stops you from using physical attacks, one that stops you from using magic, and the one that you absolutely should take, there is one that makes it so you just can't access the mini-map in the top right hand corner. You can only use, the normal map, which is more helpful anyway. So pick whichever one you feel the need to take, and then start proceeding upward. It ultimately doesn't matter, there isn't better loot or something like that depending on which one you take. They all lead to the same areas and all lead to the same treasures. So just pick whichever one works the best for you. Like I said, I start out using the one where you can't use items, but I eventually backtrack and change what ones I have just so I can show off what all of them do more effectively. Because right now everyone's got slow and we can't get rid of it outside of Asuna. And even then, I don't know if Asuna covers slow. Which is the problem you're seeing here, because I'm like, well, she can't get rid of it in any way, shape or form. So I go through my spells to see if there's any I can get rid of to try and counter anything. But eventually kind of just give up, because it's like, yeah, she's not going to do it because items are disabled. What eventually ends up being my plan here? I'm kind of curious what I do here, because it was a while ago I recorded this, that you can see the gears are turning. Oh no, I just leave it alone in the end. I eventually decide it's just not worth fiddling with, I suppose. Oh, that's one way of getting around it, just get Balthier to cast haste on people. God, yeah, can you see why it gets very annoying very quickly? Like the extra steps you have to do to get around old problems when you don't have access to items for like 3 floors straight, because that's what it is. It's the next like 3 or 4 floors in a row that you don't have access to this, so you really do need to pick something that works in your favor. Ash is the only one you don't really need to do anything for. Well, I don't need to do anything for, because she's got the piece of equipment on that gives her haste automatically anyway. So technically, as you can see, it's missing. It's because technically haste is still in effect, even though it says she's in slow. It's just a weird thing that it does. I even check it one more time. But Ash is moving at a normal speed, and she's still moving faster than everyone else. It's because the haste boots technically override it. It just causes a almost visual glitch because of it. Like, she doesn't just become immune to slow, which is what they should have done with it instead. As everyone's hit with slow, so that means only Ash is the one moving at a decent speed, as you can see. And I eventually kind of tried to just run with it for a little while, so I'm like, look, these enemies aren't strong, and the only person who needs to be at a reasonable speed is the one at a reasonable speed. Because if you look at Ash's status, she's got slow and haste. Like, how does that make sense? Oh, is this me putting haste on the party? But now that I has slow, get them haste. Oh, so he's not going to just use it. You only use it when it's needed. Fair enough on my part, because otherwise they'd just constantly be having haste spammed on them, and Balthier's MP would start to run dry. The second ascent is a lot simpler than the first ascent, thankfully, and that also applies to the third. The third is also kind of just... Well, I say the third's not necessarily simpler, it's shorter. But after the first ascent, it feels like the first ascent is the first half, and the second and third ascent are the second half. As in, we get the next 2 ascents done this video. The next video is just doing the peak, which the peak is... The main reason why that's its own part is just because of how many cutscenes played on it. But the way these floors work during the second ascent is that they're just big circles with 2 staircases and up and 2 staircases down. With the only exception being this floor, where because there's 4 different doors downstairs, there's 4 doors up, but then 4 doors up into here, but 2 doors up to go beyond. Like, there's one of the paths there. that would then go up to the 3rd floor of this section, and so on and so forth as it climbs. And there's not as much loot here as there is on other ascents, so if you're not that interested and want to get it done quickly, you can just kind of race through a lot of here. Because there's a pattern to the floors. You'll get a feel for what I mean very quickly. You'll see how everything kind of just flows. There is a pattern to everything. Is this where I finally backtrack to go explore what the other negatives do? So I know it's in the recording. I know it's there somewhere. Or is it me just clearing out this floor to see what I can find? Because this is technically a new area, so you do need to find a new map if you want to be able to see what's up ahead. You'll also notice a lot of enemies are just inflicting single status conditions. Like, they tried to hit everyone with just slow, but now they tried to hit everyone with just blind. I think that is deliberate to make it so you can counter it one way or another. Like, if enemies could spam several on you in one go, I think, depending on what weakness you picked, you could make this really brutal for yourself. So having it so it only uses one at a time on you gives you time to counter them individually, regardless of what setup you have. Like, regardless of whether you have items or magic blocks, you can still do something, which is preferable. Like, at least credit to them for actually thinking about that and countering it, assuming it's deliberate and not just coincidental that they happen to do this and it worked in their favour that it looks like this. Because you never know with these guys. Some of the development history that 12 went through sometimes makes me wonder if a few things weren't deliberate and were just kind of thrown together. Because they might not have had the time to think so deliberately about a few things. What am I looking for? We just get the black mask. Or did I get a new pair of light armor? I must have got a new piece of light armor then for me to be checking around so much. Oh, I didn't see what I picked up because I was too busy chatting. I'm talking about status conditions and whether or not they were deliberate. So we get even more. I miss being able to use my items. I should have shown them off right at the start. In hindsight, I should have just immediately gone back, but I just kind of went, oh fine, yeah, I'll just use this. Like, I kind of forgot that there were other switches down there. I just clicked the first one I saw and went, yeah, that'll do. But if you go back down there, like I said, there are different switches, and I definitely recommend you choose the 4th out of the ones I mentioned. Turning off the minimap in the top right isn't a negative thing when you've just got the L3 map. But you can just have the big map literally be on screen as you play. What's the point of the minimap? You only ever look at the minimap to be able to see the red dots for enemies, because it doesn't appear in any other map. Come on, Balthier, get everyone hastes back in order. And one more, because Barsh is still moving like a brick. There we go. On the plus side, if you look at how quickly those bars are filling up, haste really makes a difference. Look how quickly it's filling up for Balthier on every strike. Well, before it ran out. It just fires up. You get to attack really constantly with it. It's great, haste. 12 is probably the most you'll notice haste outside of the 13 trilogy. Like, 12 and the 13 trilogy are great at making you immediately notice haste. But 13 kind of cheats with it a little bit, because in 13 they make it so the bar that fills up changes colour to let you know it's being hasted. Which I kind of almost plays a trick on you, because it makes you immediately think it's making an effect, even if it's not necessarily always the best. And I say that knowing damn well that haste in the 13 trilogy is pretty brutal. If you use haste in the right circumstances, it can be staggering how quickly the bar will fill up. And you get a rose courgette, or corsage, however you pronounce that thing. These Reavers, the only real issue with them is that they're only weak to Earth, and of course Earth is the one spell that you could almost never get to use. So using magic on them will only get you so far, but at this point in the game, any normal enemy, regardless of how strong or what little gimmick they might have on them, should be manageable for you. If you're struggling with basic enemies outside of optional areas because they're supposed to be tougher, I'm not sure how you're here. the kind of thing. Like, I think the earlier floors of the Fairest Tower would have stopped you by now. And you certainly won't make the boss fights in it later on in here. The skill checks, because that's what all the little boss fights and little trials that you do throughout the tower really are. They're just skill checks. All the skill checks in this, that all they are is making sure you're the right level. This is where I finally head back down to check the other doors. The top right door, no, top left door, sorry, disables physical attacks. The bottom left disables magic, and the bottom right disables your mini-map. Which I've said before is the one you absolutely should take. Knowledge avails you not. We no longer have a mini-map in the top right corner. Why would you want any take any other? That is like the best one to deal with. And it's only for the second ascent. When you go into the third ascent, where you might want your mini-map a little bit more because of the puzzle involving, this gimmick has passed us by already. This only lasts till the end of the ascent. And the thing is that you can't actually leave the second ascent until you deactivate one of the crystals. It won't let you leave in either direction unless the crystals are all disabled. So you need to interact with the one you interacted with before again to get rid of it. It's just a weird way it works. When you get access to the lift, it's the same deal. If you don't touch the switch, any of the switches, and just take the lift, you can go straight up to the third ascent. But if you touch any of the switches, it will stop you just before the third ascent. You have to turn one of them off before it'll let you continue. I can imagine to an extent it's to do with data limitations on the PS2 at the time, just to make sure that it doesn't have to remember a lot of excess things. Which I say knowing damn well that there's one particular fight later on that you can outright leave the game and it will count in real time even when you're not playing. And it will still register certain things about it, so it's not like it couldn't do it. It's just, I guess, for the sake of saving space, they decided against doing it for here. So made it so you had to turn them off before you could leave. Some of those walls, man. Do you see that one in the corridor that I just rubbed up against? Some of these walls are deliberately mighty suspicious, so you just start headbutting all of them in the hopes that one of them will be what you're looking for. I mean, look at it. Look at the way the pillars are shaped. They do it so much here, and some of them are like deliberately just weirdly placed, so you raise an eyebrow to it and check it out, and then there's just nothing there. I say that, if there's a door, if there's like an area on the other side of where it would be that you've already been to, then you probably shouldn't really expect there to be a full facade for you to interact with. It's just when it's on like the edges here, like around there sort of thing, that you should be on the lookout for them. Like here, for instance, you check kind of thing because it could possibly be a door. Whilst the other ones, like when I was rubbing up against the ones in this sort of room sort of thing, or the next one, wouldn't make sense for them to be there anyway because we can so easily get to the area on the other side without them. There's no secrets with them. It would just be a slight shortcut. And a very slight. We're talking like a Mario Kart taking a sharper corner. Because that's what I miss from a lot of racing games nowadays. Shortcuts that feel like they matter. Like I played Burnout Revenge like recently because I played it a lot when I was a kid, but I came back to it recently, and the shortcuts in that game are brilliant. All of them are not only really good, but they're really dangerous as well. Like there's one where there's two roads that split off to take the same corner, so one of them naturally is a far sharper, shorter corner than the other, but the road's thin as hell. And the wall is made of like spaced out cinder blocks, so if you rub up against the wall, you won't just scratch along the side and survive it. You will whack a cinder block because there's just enough gap between them that the front will tilt. So you had to be really careful about how you handled it. Or they would have like a straight path or a jump off the side, and even though they cover the same distance, you gain boost for driving recklessly, so it'd give you a little bit of boost for your airtime. So that in itself became a shortcut making the jump, even though it was the same distance. Like they had so much more fun with it. Or like if you was in downtown, they'd have random dumpsters scattered around the place, like down a sharp alleyway, so if you could squeeze through it, it was great. If not, you suffered for it. Like just fun, unique, but kind of dangerous shortcuts. I miss them. You don't really see them that much anymore. The quote-unquote spiritual success of the Burnout, Dangerous Driving, because it was made by a lot of the original team, lacked any of them, and it was really disappointing to see. I say that Dangerous Driving as a whole was really disappointing. It wasn't hideous like some journalists would have you believe. Like it wasn't the worst thing ever. When you acknowledge that it is an indie team of like 7 people, I never expected it to be like the best thing ever and blow my socks off. It was just still, there was a couple things I felt like should have taken a bit more time to work on. And one of them was the fact that almost all the tracks were just railroads. And it's very concerning now that they've confirmed they're doing a sequel and they want it to be open world like a la Burnout Paradise. And it's like, Burnout Paradise was great, don't get me wrong. But Burnout Paradise was also like several hundred people, and this is 6 or 7 people, and this 6 or 7 couldn't handle a linear racing game. That's not to say that small dev teams can't be brilliant. There are some dev teams, or some one-man devs, that end up making games that are legendary. If you get a Tula there. It's just when you've proved to me that you can't handle something that big, and you need to tone it down a little bit to make something more impressive later on, it then becomes more problematic when you then tell me you're going to do something more ambitious. It's like if the Mad Minds studio, I think they're called, the guys who made Agony, I might be dead wrong with their name, I think it's Mad Minds, if they then turn around and said they would make a more ambitious sequel to Agony, I would have been like, excuse me, no. Agony was, you want to talk about a game that was actually terrible, Agony. That was straight up bad. It was horrible. And I felt bad because I even got it early. I got it like 2 days before it was supposed to come out. Because it was like, it was just one of those things, because I'd been an early backer of it and supported it, I got a copy early of it, and I was like, alright, sure, I'll give it a try, and I hated it. The game is so slow, it's pitch black, glitchy as hell, has a really hideous checkpointing system, and everything can instant kill you. It's like, why? This isn't fun. Oh, and half the endings you can't even access on the PS4 version, because they involve, like, overly grotesque scenes that both Sony and Microsoft said no. You get rid of these scenes so the games are getting rated adult. And getting games that are rated adult will never appear on official first party platforms. You can only get them on third party or unrated versions. So the only way to get half the endings is to play the unrated version on Steam. Or download a pirated copy that has the endings reactivated. So you don't even get half the story. Because there's like 7 endings and 4 of them would have made the game get a rated adult only, because they felt like going ridiculously over the top for the sake of going over the top. It's like, oh, it's a horror game based in hell, so let's make it really, really weird. And kind of forget about the horror 5 minutes in. So I kind of went off on a tangent there. It's like, both Dangerous Driving and Agony were like really small indie projects I was really looking forward to, and both of them just kind of left me feeling a little bitter. More Agony than Dangerous Driving, because Dangerous Driving I don't think's bad, it's just basic, it's just kind of alright kind of thing. It's just like, really am not sure what they expect to accomplish with a sequel going open world if the first one was only as mediocre as it was. Because Burnout Paradise was the last hurrah of the series, and it was also the killing blow for Burnout. We never really got another full budget Burnout. We got that crappy Burnout Crash mobile phone spin-off game that was a complete waste of time. But we never had a true Burnout successor. Paradise was kind of like the last hurrah and the killing blow for the series. Which is a shame, because Burnout was amazing, and it was far better than Need for Speed in my opinion. Need for Speed was too serious. I always preferred Burnout because you could have more fun with it. You could bounce it around more as a party racer and just enjoy it with friends or family. I used to play it with my dad all the time, and just to see it just vanish after Paradise was just so gutting for me. And that's not to say Paradise didn't have some issues. Outside of party mode, the only way to do any kind of local co-op was modding. Because party mode, even then party mode, you couldn't use split controllers. It was like, someone do a stunt, and then it says pass the controller. Second player, try and do the same stunt but better. Things like that. Like, it was a normal co-op or a normal local multiplayer, which just felt gutting to me. It felt like a bad choice. Oh, we get the Dragon Mail, which will lower our MP but boost our defense. Well, it'll boost our strength more than our defense, is the problem. You can see I debate it for a while, because there's a lot good in it, but the magic power takes a hit quite heavily, and the magic resist takes a smaller hit. To be fair, the defenses on the armor weren't that bad. It was the power of the armor that was letting it down, because Balthier, I want him to lean more into magic, especially now he's got more onto his belt. So I can't really afford to then give up some of that magic just because the physical defense is a little better. But we're nearly there. Similar to what I was referring to last time, you can see on the on-screen map that the next floor is the same as the second to last floor, the last ascent, where you just enter, there's a save crystal and a basic circle on its own. I don't get the point of that fool's facade. I really don't. Because you can just go around here. Like, I want to say one of the doors is maybe like only one way or something, but this game doesn't really bother with that much. It just seems odd. Also, this gets a little worrying because disable is inflicted, and suddenly we have a bunch of enemies that want to make the most of that. So I can't do anything as Barsh to, there we go, to end the fight immediately. And then as we kill it, everyone else gets hit with disable, and you can see I was kind of like, I'm not going to heal that off. Disable will burn out eventually, so I just kind of leave it in the end. Alright, okay, so the only way... Well, no, that still doesn't make sense. It can't be opened from this side. That means if you go around from the other way, you can still go to it. So it's literally just a shortcut then. It's just there to stop you going around, but it's not actually a secret, which is what most of the other ones are. I mean, okay, but sure. I'm still going to explore everything anyway. Which you should too, if you're following along anyway. You should be exploring as much as you can. Because although the loot in the second ascent isn't as good as the first and third, there's still loot down here. There is still some things you might want. Like, we got a new crossbow for Balfir, for goodness sake. There's still the odd good thing. It's just equipment outside of like the really powerful ones late game, like the optional areas, like the armor set you got in the Lucy Mines. A lot of your equipment you will find isn't as worth it as it used to be. Like, they're good, but they're not going to make the difference in do or die situations. Your strategy is. And so spells will naturally, or spells or techniques will naturally be better loots, because that will allow you to expand said strategies, expand said tactics, make them as wide as you can make them. God, they've chucked a lot of enemies in here. All of these guys. What do you pronounce that? Is that Boon? Bun? Bun doesn't sound serious. If the enemy's called Bun, I'm going to be like, where's the burger? I'm going to assume it's Boon. Boon makes more sense in my head, at least, for a name. Or Bounet. Maybe they're French. And there's a couple of Reavers in here as well. Thankfully, the disable bolts make short work of that. See, can you see why I kept the disable base bolts and not the immobilized ones? Because immobilized don't make sense. Why would you want immobilized over disable? Make them stand still over making them be worthless. I know which one I would prefer. Making them so they can't do anything to me. I just don't get why you take one over the other. Yeah, one's got a magic number of 1 extra attack, but it's just not worth it. Like, the recommendation, I think, should consider status conditions, and should have like a hierarchy list, like a built-in hierarchy list of like identifying what status conditions are better than others, and from there recognize that being able to stop your enemies attacking from being able to stop them go walkies, one of them is definitely more significant than the other. And so it should be recommending that. Although I suppose you could argue in the much older Final Fantasies there was no optimizing system whatsoever. You had to manually equip everything. And in the original version of Final Fantasy 1, you didn't really even know what was better until you brought it and equipped it, and then manually looked at your stats to hope for the best. Like, it wouldn't get an up arrow or anything when you go to equip it, and it wouldn't tell you whilst you're equipping it. You'd have to equip it, back out the screen, go down to status, click on that, then look at them, and hope that the number is higher than what you remember it being a minute ago. Thankfully, it was changed in in the remaster and any future re-release beyond that. But in the original NES Final Fantasy 1, you just had to deal with that. It's not as awkward as the original Dragon Quest. But then I say that as someone who's never really been a big fan of Dragon Quest, so yeah. But the original Dragon Quest, you had to go through like 10 menus to do literally anything. You had to bring up a menu to interact with stairs. You had to bring up a menu to interact with a door you've already opened. You had to interact with a menu to go through any kind of shrubbery and things like that. It was just so many extra unnecessary steps. Like, you'd press the interact button, and it'd come with like a menu of like 12 things, and it was just like one button just said stare, one button just said talk, one button said check. Like, it was such a... It was borderline one of those text adventures. It was that slow with it. And that's not to say text adventures are bad, it's just I'm going into a text adventure, I'm going into it because I know it's one, not because it's supposed to be a JRPG that's just got 99% of it being text adventure properties. But I'll digress on that one. We've got the third of the trials up here. And this one's the last real trial until the peak. Similar to the last one, this one's got heightened attack, but this one's... Fenrir here is kind of a best of both worlds in the sense of it has better defense and better attack. Like, it's better defense than Slit, and it has better attack than Pandemonium, but it's not as great as either. So it is dangerous because it's the best mixture of two, but it's also not as bad because it's not as great in either category. But as you can see, its health is still kind of trickling down at a decent rate without much threat, even if it is hitting us kind of hard. But the thing is, it's not hitting us as hard as, say, Slit was. But even then, the fight against Slit ended in like 5 seconds. So as you can see, he's already nearly dead. Even though he's trying to buff himself during HP critical to make the last stretch a little more difficult, he's still gonna just... There he goes. God, that last hit was almost 10k. That's brutal. Keep in mind now, I haven't got any status buffs to augment Barsh's attack or weaken the enemy's defense, and he was still whipping out 10k damage. Seriously, using foe breaker weaponry can really make the difference. Also, there's a loot box in the background, and I literally only noticed it on this congrats screen. There's 2 in fact, and I was sitting there, I was like, oh! I don't think they're anything insignificant. I'm certain they're nothing significant. They're just like healing items to give you a better chance against the fight, because you can never return to any of these arenas once you leave. But it's still a little gutting to just have those items be there and not be able to interact with them. Like, you see me kind of look around to see if they get moved around at all, but no. If you don't pick them up, you've lost them. I think there was one during the arena against Slit as well, but he died way too quickly. But once you get up here, the portal to go to the third ascent will not allow you to activate it until you return to these altars and re-interact with them. But similar to the last one, I do a lap around the place just to quickly check to see if there's anything of interest before we go up. There isn't, not even an elemental this time. They just want you to interact with whatever altar you've got and then get moving to the third and final ascent. So if you interact back with the knowledge, it will retrieve the crystal on the other side, returning it back up here. Everything will return back to normal, and now the portal will activate, allowing you to proceed. Similarly, the portal to go back down to the first ascent would have been disabled until now as well. But this isn't technically the end. Like, we still need to go up one more floor and then it's the portal. It's just the portal won't be there if you've interacted with any of the crystals. But because this is the last real time that, well, the highest floors that the lift can really go to, because starting with the third ascent, the structure of the third ascent makes it more difficult to justify the lift really appearing. They make the lift spawn in now, so you can just take it up the one floor and save any extra trouble and then take the portal from there. So you just tap up and up you go. You even see me look at it to see if it go any higher. No, it only goes you from 66 to 67. Oh, how nice of it to even barricade you in so you can't leave once it's activated, like a traditional lift. I'm sure they really needed it in their super advanced ancient time to also tell people to not take the lift, to not jump off the lift whilst it's moving. Oh dear. But there's another lap to quickly do here if you want to look around. I think I cut it off this one. There's also a save crystal before you go to the third ascent if you really want to. Yeah, I did a lap just off camera. Yeah, I could see on the map that I did it. And when you interact with this, celebrate the fact that you're finally nearly there. You're not finally actually there, you're finally nearly there. As we enter the third ascent, the meat of Dynasty. The way this works is that it's actually a giant warping puzzle. It's a teleporting maze, if you've ever used any of them before. Depending on what teleporter you take, depends on what location you end up on. But as this thing here will alert you to right in front of you, if you take the wrong one, it will just take you back to the start. If you take the wrong one twice, it will punish you by taking you to a combat room. If you want the map, you need to go to the combat room. And the thing is, I actively try to get the wrong one here. And after the first one, because I get it wrong once, but from this point on, after getting it wrong once, I get it right every single time afterwards. And I wanted to get it wrong so I could show you the combat room. Like, I was so like, god damn it. Like, I wanted to show you, like, if you interact with this one isn't the right one to interact with. So it just takes you back to the start, and that's your only warning. If you get it wrong a second time, it would then chuck you down the combat room down here. On the other side of that door, and it will trap you in until you've killed everything in there. Like, you won't be able to leave until everything's dead. So I pick at random, and I'm like, okay, black sigil, this one's probably wrong because I picked at random as well. I'll go with this, and it ends up being correct. See? And then this one I was like, god damn it! Like, when this happened, you see, I spin the camera because I'm just like, damn it, I'm going to go in the combat room. And so from this point onwards, it's like, well, I'm still only on one warning. So as long as I get literally any of them wrong from this point onwards, I'll be fine. And then I proceed to get every single one of them right from this point onwards. It's painful. If you go around here, there's a fool's facade though, so be sure to interact with it. Because on the other side, well, there's the Antares, but that's not the main reason you want this. The Antares is a weapon, Rob. Oh no, it's not. What is the Antares then? What's the Antares? I'm looking for it. I'm like, what is it? It's genuinely baffling me. I'm like, where is this thing? Anyway, that's there, but that's not the main reason you want to come down this way. Yeah, on that. Get it, Rob. That should be flare, yes. And the portal behind us that was there, you also want to take, because if you take the portal and immediately turn around, I can't remember if it's a spell or a technique, but one of the two will be there, so you can add to your spell and technique list. And it's only just an alternate way to get to the next floor anyway, so don't worry about it like breaking your path. But take that one behind us, don't go back out here, because this was me once again deliberately trying to find the wrong path, and I assumed the one in the secret room was probably the right path. Which, yeah, it is. It's a joint correct path, because both of them take you to the same space eventually, just one takes you to a different area so you can pick up the loot. So after trying to get the area knight to approach near us, and it just not caring, I'd say, alright, I'll take this one. This one's probably wrong, hopefully. And then it's not. See? I'm like, on this one I'm like, ah! They didn't even look back. I'm like, god damn it. My luck is astounding. It's either I've got like some sixth sense memory of them being right and I go with them anyway, or I just have hideous luck, and I am willing to bet it's the latter. That because I want to go to the wrong area, I'm getting the correct one every single time on chance. Because at this point I'm like, okay, red. That has to be wrong, right? They wouldn't be correct again. It's correct. And I look back again, like every time I'm like, are you serious? At least that one had an error mode. So if you want a free error usage, you can, I suppose. Be wary of the Parabolos here using chain reaction, because then they can convince the others to self-destruct as well. Because one self-destructing is fine, but multiple in a row is just problems. So I'm like, okay, yellow. Sigil of Sacrifice. It's correct again. No, I legit, this wasn't intentional. I wasn't following any walkthrough or anything. I was trying to get the wrong one, and I got the correct one every single goddamn time. Those who reach the final sphere, to the Undying the final path belongs. It references to the Undying a hell of a lot. there is a enemy we'll be fighting in the game of the same name, and I'm curious if they are actually referring to that one. And at this time I'm like, okay, well the secret path might not have been correct last time, so maybe if I take the secret path this time it will be wrong and it will still keep me back. Which, yes, it would mean it's a long journey to get back because we've gone so many right ways, but I'm sure it'll be fine. This one couldn't possibly be the correct one anyway. It is. And you get an elixir for your trouble. If you take that warp down there, it will actually take you to a different space that will lead into the combat room, but because you didn't get punished to go in there, there's no enemies within, so you can just loot it and move on. But at this point I'm like, you know what, no, stuff it, I'll come back for it, which I do. I do come back for it when I do my cleanup, because as I've mentioned before, there's a point later on where I come back because I need to pick up Holy in the first ascent, and I pick up that technique that I was referring to a few minutes ago in this ascent. But when you go to take the lift up to the final one, you'll get interrupted with the last proper boss before the peak, because I always forget this guy exists. We haven't had an Esper fight in a while. If you've been doing every single Esper up to this point, this is your 10th Esper, meaning after you've got this guy, you can finally access the second piece of the Hen Mines, which we'll be doing later on, because the Hen Mines is like the most dangerous area in the game. This is another dude that has a pretty cool design, but it's kind of wasted because if you've been, especially you've been doing the optional stuff along the way, this is like the weakest Esper you fought in a long while. Hashmal here isn't a threat at all. He just kind of hits you. He doesn't even really have a gimmick. He just kind of hits you hard. He also has Roxraw, which every time I can't help but not read it like it's Scooby-Doo saying it. He also, oddly enough, gets disease inflicted on him, and will then try and... Like, I guess that's the thing. Roxraw makes any condition that's on him suddenly go on you, but he has disease on him, so he physically can't get any health back. His current health is also his max health. And his Earth-based ultimate, well, you see, with Quakeja didn't do anything. The only real threat is that he got disease on one of us, and that's it. So then we go through my menus, just to get a serum on Balthier. And he died before I even got it off. So Hashmal is not that bad. And he's not the only Esper you can get here as well. There's another one we'll be getting next part. Because there's one here and one on the peak. This one, I've seen people argue that they think that one might have been rushed because you get another one at the peak, and the one on the peak makes more sense. Or alternatively, the one on the peak was rushed and this one is the one they intended for you to get. But either way, it just seems odd. What I would have done personally is put Hashmal in the optional area of the Pharos Tower to give you more reason to go down there other than the hunt, and then put the Phoenix, that is an optional boss that you can find down there, here. Have the Phoenix be here, because the Phoenix is part of the group of 4, so having you actually fight all 4 of the group of 4 instead of just 3 of them and then one's optional would have made more sense. But once you fight that one, this arena isn't actually a normal location you can access, so they automatically through cutscene walk back onto the lift and you can never access that particular space ever again. It's the same with the hunt on the bottommost floor of the optional area. When we go for that, the floor the hunt is on, you only access it for that fight, and the moment you do the fight, it's never accessible again. But as you can hear, the music's gone silent. That's because the challenge of dealing with it is now behind us. If you've got to this point, for all intents and purposes, you have done the tower. You've only got the end bosses of here left. And in fact, if you're only doing the main game, you've only got bosses left outright. I kid you not, this is the end of the last proper dungeon of the game. Because the only place after this is one room and then 2 bosses, one of them being the final boss. That's it. Also, I didn't really mean to, I got it on Swiftness, but now we've got Bravery and Faith on Bash. So when we get Bravery, we can make it so Bash can manually boost his own physical attacks. Which is the only white magic I could ever think to want to give to a physical attacker. Additionally, he also has faith, so he can help the mages out whilst they just concentrate on using their attacks. Because Barsh's MP isn't that great, but at the same time it's not terrible. His magic stat doesn't matter for faith and bravery because it's an automatic boost. The only other thing of real interest is that when you go through here, a cutscene will activate partway through here, and it will teleport you to the other end of this room. So if you look back on your map, there's a huge chunk of this room that you will just miss, and you want to backtrack because there's mega elixirs. But there's a cutscene.
The Suncrist must be near.
I wonder if she'll really do it. Take revenge against the Empire. I mean, I know how she must feel. It's hard, losing someone you care about.
Something we all got in common.
But you know, no matter how hard we try, we can't change the past. There's nothing that can bring them back. Still, sometimes when I close my eyes, I can see them so clearly.
Illusions of the past. You think to have cast them off, only to find them years later, unwearying, unrelenting. The past can bind a man as surely as irons. Cut the true path. But will she?
I suppose we'll have to find out next time. But if you look on the map, we've skipped a huge chunk. The whole right half of this is just gone. But anyway, next time on Final Fantasy XII, we'll reach the peak of the Pharos Tower. But until then, you take care now.